Welcome to Northwest Arkansas, the home of Walmart, Tyson, J.B. Hunt, and the University of Arkansas. The Northwest Arkansas area has grown rapidly in the recent years to a population of about 500,000 and a GDP of about $22.5 billion. Kathy Deck, the director for the Center of Business and Economic Research, and Dr. John Dominic helped to explain what happened prior to the financial crisis.
Well, the Northwest Arkansas economy is almost unrecognizable from 15 years ago. 15 years ago, we were just at the place where the vendor community was co-locating in Northwest Arkansas to help support Walmart. When we look at our biggest industries, they were much, much smaller than the amenities of the area in terms of the interstate had just been built, the airport had just been built. We didn't have Rogers built out as, say, a retail destination. We didn't have nearly as many banks. We didn't have nearly as many anythings as we do now.
Well, prior to the financial crisis, we were growing very, very rapidly up here. Commercial real estate and housing, it was booming. Right. And you had a lot of land being purchased, a lot of land being developed, and houses developed. That is about the only source of good loan demand in Northwest Arkansas.
As Dr. Dominic said, the loan portfolios of community banks in Northwest Arkansas were very heavily concentrated in commercial real estate in 2006, with over 50% of their portfolios. Even today, community banks in the area are still heavily concentrated in commercial real estate.
All the way up through 2008. What happened was there was an explosion in activity. Prior to that, Northwest Arkansas had been growing much, much more quickly than the rest of the country in terms of population growth, in terms of employment growth, in terms of income growth. And it was like everybody recognized that at the same moment and said, how can we serve this demand a year? So we were just exploding. But even though we were on fire, the supply of new housing, supply of new commercial space was even ahead of that. And so as we got into the end of 2006, beginning of 2007, it became apparent that kind of the inventory of properties was beginning to pile up.
And to meet the demand of commercial real estate, Northwest Arkansas needed supply, and the supply came. At the height of the boom in 2005 and 2006, there was over $200 million in commercial real estate being built throughout the community.
Banks can't compete with captive sales finance companies, with Ford Motor Credit and that sort of stuff on consumer durables. So, but in Washington and Benton counties, the big thing is commercial real estate, and has been for a long time. Plus, we have far, far, far too many banks, far, far, far too many banking locations up here.
In 2005, Legacy National Bank opened its doors in Springdale, Arkansas. President and CEO of Legacy National Bank, Don Gibson, explains why Legacy came into the scene.
It would be a bank that would not be for sale. It would be a bank that would be formed for our children and our grandchildren, and the primary market would be just Northwest Arkansas.
So why a community bank? Derek Gibson, Executive Vice President of Commercial Lending, explains the purpose of community banks.
Local businesses, our role in the community is to stimulate economic growth. So we help companies start up, so we help create jobs. We've created 66 jobs here just within our business. And so we obviously, being a community bank, you support local charities, local schools. You just become part of the community. And so I think we're doing a really good job of fulfilling that role and doing our part.
As a new part of the Northwest Arkansas community, it was Legacy's goal to serve the people and the businesses to the best of their abilities, and raising capital from investors was the first step.
It said that Legacy National Bank would achieve the size of $100 million in 3 years. We filed a call report on March the 31st of 2005 because we had 3 days of operation, and that still was a requirement then. We had to file a call, and we were about $26 million in footings. The regulator sent it back to us and said, I'm sorry, you submitted your call, you've made a mistake. It's a period or something, a decimal, something's wrong here. But it was true. Because of the investors that we had, we were able in 3 days to go $26 million. and then my pro forma that said it would take us 3 years to get to 100. We, as of 12/31 of 2005, were $131 million.
So now that Legacy raised an impressive amount of capital, they needed to make some loans.
We needed loans to grow the bank so we could get a return for the shareholders and the capital that was invested.
And it got to be a very flooded market in that arena as well. Lots of subdivisions going up at the same time, and the banks in the market at that time were not paying attention to what borrowers were doing with other banks. So that's one thing that's changed in our culture, is we really focus on a borrower and underwriting their whole global financial situation. So we know if they're borrowing money at Arvest or at Simmons Bank or whatever, and that's something.
Take advantage of the opportunity to fund all of these new projects. Those banks found themselves absolutely all of these non-performing assets all of a sudden, all of these speculative commercial properties and then even speculative residential properties that simply didn't have any cash flow associated with them.
With the effects of the 2008 financial crisis on Wall Street trickling down to the real estate markets all over the country, Northwest Arkansas felt the downturn very hard. Nobody could have predicted the enormity of the financial crisis, but there was no avoiding its reality. Legacy Bank was in for a challenge.
Getting too hot. But what we really got surprised with is when Lehman's had the problem and all that started going down, how quickly it fell. It wasn't a hill, it was a cleft. And that caught everybody by surprise. As you know, that feasibility study did not take into consideration the possibility of a major real estate downturn in Northwest Arkansas and globally across the United States. And that hit us. It hit us hard because we were a baby, we were an infant. And even though we had started to see the signs that things were coming, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency had just closed Arkansas National Bank, and they were quick on the trigger. And so we went under formal agreement in May of 2008.
As the effects of the crisis set in, Legacy was forced to charge off many of their loans. Charged off commercial real estate loans accounted for almost 9% of total loans in 2009. In addition, their return on assets suffered too, dipping into negative amounts after 2007. As Don Gibson stated, this led to Legacy Bank entering into a formal agreement with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in May of 2008. Northwest Arkansas was now in the depths of the recession, and Kathy Deck recalls those turbulent times.
There was a national recession in 2001. And in 2001, if you look at employment growth in Northwest Arkansas and employment growth in the rest of the country, it was like we didn't even have a recession. It was like the rest of the country's recession didn't even touch Northwest Arkansas. That is not at all the case of the Great Recession. In fact, we saw our employment growth fall faster than the nation's and earlier than the nation's. Now, we in fact recovered a little bit more quickly and earlier than the rest of the country, but it was deep. We saw the construction sector, we saw the finance sector, we saw all of the trade, transportation, and utility sector, all of our big employment sectors go crumbling to the ground. And so Northwest Arkansas was no longer seen as immune to the kind of national downturns that we had.
Unemployment skyrocketed in the years of the recession, reaching levels of over 6%. As shown, Legacy Bank still remains heavily concentrated in commercial real estate assets. So we wondered, how can Legacy still remain competitive in the market going forward without exposing themselves to too much risk?
Efficiencies so that we can compete in a very tough market competitive-wise. And, you know, with the use of technology, with anything we can do to drive down our expense ratios, our efficiency ratios, manage our cost of funds, so that if we're having to go out and make a loan at 3 1/4, we've got to have a cost of funds that allows us to have a little bit of a spread. You know, so those are going to be our challenges, and more than this, the market is.
The market is it's a vibrant, opportunistic market. You just have to proceed with caution, and you can't get out of control like banks did in the past, like borrowers did in the past. But I think there's incredible opportunity in this market and will continue to be.
The lessons that we learned with that. And as far as recovering, we still have some assets that we think are well valued within our portfolio, so we don't have any, like we had in 2007, there would be that day you'd come in and you'd lose $700,000 before you had your first cup of coffee. You know, we don't have that kind of thing in our portfolio. The other real estate that we have, we've given it its haircut. We get it appraised every year. We market to market, less expenses for selling.
Now that Legacy Bank has learned from the past, managing their commercial real estate will be crucial moving forward.
Today on our backroom functions, which is our credit analyst, making sure that credits have good primary source of repayment, good secondary source of repayment, and then the proper collateral analysis. We spend a lot of money with our loan operations, making sure we're tracking financial information correctly, looking at things correctly, also making sure that we have proper collateral documentation in file and those type of things. And, I mean, that's the real key, is making sure the loan can get paid back.
With a new mindset post-crisis, Legacy Bank was able to successfully rebound from the crisis. Their charge-offs in commercial real estate began to decline, and their bank returned to profitability in 2011. While still returning to profitability and recovering from the financial crisis, Gary Kleck and Don Gibson reflect on the bigger picture of community banking.
We never quit giving back to the community. We never quit being involved in the community. We never quit serving on the chamber boards. We never quit going to the PTA meetings and those kind of things. And to me, Don and I came out of larger bank operations. In a larger bank operation, you didn't really have that impact in the community a lot of times. In a community bank like us, we do, and people in the community recognize it. And to me, that's very rewarding, is to be able to give back to the community and help somebody start a business or grow their business or buy a house or whatever the means is.
Definition of legacy. We decided to call ourselves Legacy. We got these 3 swishes that's in the logo. And that is, first of all, recognizing the Don Tysons, Sam Waltons, Charlie George, Willis Shaw, Harvey Jones, Joe Steele, all the people that were entrepreneurs in Northwest Arkansas that turned this from an agricultural economy to an economy that competes on a nationwide, worldwide basis. That's their gift they gave us, their legacy. The one in the center is us. And it's our job, to your question, is we've got to leave our legacy and keep it going, because its third swish is our children. And we want to give them as much as we were given and more, and pass that on.
With Northwest Arkansas back in full swing, community banks often don't get the credit they deserve. Community banks in Northwest Arkansas have served as a backbone to business and have affected Northwest Arkansas in ways that cannot be measured. Community banks provide opportunity, stability, and confidence to those people who strive to improve our community. A special thank you to Legacy Bank for allowing us to dive into the inner workings of their organization. Also, a special thank you to Dr. John Dominic and Kathy Deck for their insight into Northwest Arkansas. And lastly, to Dr. Tim Yeager for providing us with tremendous support throughout this production. And none of this would have been possible without the video expertise of Alex Irwin.